Welcome, my dear listener. Tonight, you and I sit together, not in the rush of the day, but in the hush of night. A quiet fire glows before us, its crackle steady, its warmth gentle, its light soft against the shadows. Here, you are safe. Here, you can let go before your eyes grow too heavy, before you sink into rest. Let me remind you of something simple. If these calm journeys bring you peace, if they help you drift away from the weight of the day, I invite you, like this video and subscribe. It may seem small, but it keeps this circle alive. It lets us gather here again and again, by the same quiet fire. And as you listen, I want to ask you something. Where are you right now? Are you tucked into bed, letting your body soften into the mattress? Or are you traveling, perhaps lying back in a quiet room far from home? Are you listening on headphones, the outside world shut away? Or is the sound filling your space, blending with the hum of your fan? Whatever your moment looks like, I'd love to know. Leave a comment and share it with me. It is one of my favorite things, to see where these stories travel. The places, the rooms, the lives they touch. And now, let me place a thought in your mind. In our modern world, people reach for many things when they want to shift their mind. A glass of wine at the end of a long day. A puff of smoke drifting upward in the quiet. A pill slipped beneath the tongue. Some find escape in music, pulsing and rhythmic, carrying them far from ordinary thought. Others in meditation, in breath, in stillness. But long before our world, in the age of longships and sagas, men and women of the North were already asking the same question. How can the mind be lifted? How can it touch something beyond the ordinary? What did the Vikings do when they wanted to get high? This is the path we will walk tonight. Not battles, not swords, not raids on foreign shores, but the hidden world of intoxication, of altered states, of vision and ritual. For the Vikings, feasting, drinking, and dreaming were just as powerful as war. So, before we begin, let your body find stillness. Adjust your blanket. Soften the muscles in your face. Let the jaw loosen, let the tongue rest heavy. Breathe in through the nose. Let the chest rise like a slow tide. Breathe out through the mouth. Let the tide fall again. Settle deeper into your bed or your chair, wherever you are. If you have a fan nearby, let its steady hum become part of this moment. A soft backdrop, like wind along the fjords. And as you drift, Imagine yourself far from here. Snow outside. Stars wheeling in the endless night sky. A long house of timber. Smoke curling toward the rafters. Inside. Firelight flickers on carved beams. Shadows dance across shields and spears hung on the wall. People gather close. Wrapped in wool. Drinking from horns. Their voices low at first, then rising in laughter. This is where our journey begins. So close your eyes when you're ready, and come with me into the Viking Age, where fire, feast, and strange secrets of the mind carried people beyond the ordinary into the world of gods and dreams. The fire continues to glow. Sparks drift upward into the rafters, fading into the dark. Around it, the long house hums with life. Voices low, murmurs of song, the faint thud of a cup set down upon a wooden table. The Viking Age, often remembered for its ships, its swords, its raids upon distant coasts. But if you step closer, if you sit quietly among them, you'll see another side. The side not of battle, but of being, of gathering, of longing for something more than the simple weight of the world. The Northlands were hard. Winters long, the days of light short and fleeting. Men and women lived with cold in their bones, with hunger always close at hand. And so, when they could, they gathered to feast, to drink, to tell stories, to forget the harshness outside. But these gatherings were never only about food or laughter. They were about power, about bonds, about touching something beyond the ordinary. To drink, to grow light in the head, to let words flow freely, was to step closer to the gods. For the Vikings believed that intoxication was a gift, a bridge between men and the divine, a way to honor the gods, and sometimes a way to borrow their strength. It was ritual, it was celebration, it was command. Imagine it. A hall filled with smoke and firelight. The smell of roasted meat thick in the air. The chief, seated at the high seat, horn in hand, offering drink to those he trusted most. Each sip not only a pleasure, but a promise, an oath, a tie that bound men together in loyalty. And yet, it was more than drink, more than mead or ale. For in the shadows, in quiet rituals, some sought visions. They turned to herbs, to mushrooms, to smoke rising in the fire. They listened for whispers, for signs, for glimpses of the world beyond sight. This was intoxication in the Viking Age. Not just escape, but meaning. Not only pleasure, but power. So tonight, as you lie back, as your breath slows, Let yourself imagine being there. A place where the boundary between ordinary life and otherworldly vision was thin. Where the high was not only in the body, but in the spirit. For the Vikings, getting high was not merely about altering the mind. It was about stepping into a story larger than themselves. A story of gods, of fate, of oaths that could not be broken. And as we drift deeper into their world, we will see how they raised their horns of mead, how they lit fires that turned smoke into visions, how warriors sought frenzy, how seeresses sought prophecy, and how all of it wove together into the saga of what it meant to be alive in the north. So let the fire stay with you, crackling softly in the mind's ear. And let us step now further into the mead hall, where the drink of the gods waits, sweet and golden, ready to flow. The mead hall glows, firelight flickering on carved timbers, shadows dancing across shields that line the walls. Here, in this place of warmth, of voices, of shared breath, mead flows, golden and thick, sweet upon the tongue. Mead, the drink of the gods, made not from grain, nor from grapes, but from honey, wild and rare, gathered from bees whose hives clung to the cliffs and forests of the north. Every drop carried with it the labor of summer, the hum of bees in heather fields, the sweetness of blossoms beneath the sun. When winter came, and the nights grew long, to drink mead was to drink sunlight, to drink memory, to drink warmth. The Vikings believed mead was more than a drink. It was sacred. In their myths, Odin himself sought it, fought for it, stole it. The mead of poetry, a drink said to grant wisdom, inspiration, and the gift of song. To sip it was not just to grow light in the head. It was to touch the divine, to be filled with words not your own. In the longhouses, mead was poured not casually, but with meaning. A horn lifted was a horn of honor. The order of drinking mattered. Who was served first? Who sat nearest the chief? It told of rank, of trust, of place within the weaving of the community. Imagine sitting there. A great carved hall around you. The smell of pine smoke. The hum of voices rising and falling. Your hands cradle a drinking horn, smooth and cool, polished by many lips before yours. The mead touches your tongue. Warm, golden. A sweetness that lingers at the back of your throat. The warmth spreads slowly through your chest, loosening thought, softening the body. The fire seems brighter, the laughter fuller, the stories more vivid. And soon, the hall is alive, with boasting, with singing, with stories too wild to be told in daylight. Men rise to swear oaths, promising loyalty, vengeance, glory. Their words made bold by drink. Skalds recite verses, sagas rolling like waves across the room, each word carrying the weight of centuries. But mead was not only for warriors. Women carried the horns. Women poured the drink. Women, in their quiet power, shaped the ritual of the hall. To receive mead from the hands of a woman was to be honored, blessed. To be denied was to be shamed, to be cast aside. And so mead was woven into everything. Love, war, loyalty, poetry. It was both joy and danger. For in too much, words spilled that could not be taken back. Promises made in drunken boldness bound men to deeds they might later regret. Yet this, too, was part of its power. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the sweetness on your tongue, the slow drift of warmth through your veins. Feel the hall around you, the weight of fur across your shoulders, the nearness of voices, of breath, of laughter. The fire crackles, horns clink, voices rise. This is how mead moved through the Viking world. Not just a drink, but a thread tying mortals to gods, tying past to present. And as the mead horn passes from hand to hand, let us drift further, beyond the sweetness of honey, into the rituals of ale and feasting, where drink was not only pleasure, but oath. The hall breathes. The walls creak softly in the winter cold. The fire pops as logs settle deeper into embers. Within, warmth holds back the darkness. And with warmth comes the comfort of drink. Ale. Not golden and sweet like mead, but darker, richer, brewed from barley, rye, and grains gathered after harvest. It carried the taste of earth, of soil tilled by hand, of fields bent under the weight of northern winds. It was not a luxury. It was life. And yet, in the hall, even the most ordinary drink became a ritual. The chieftain sits at the high seat, his horn polished smooth, rim glinting faintly in the firelight. He lifts it slowly, holds it in silence for a heartbeat. All eyes follow. All voices still. He drinks first, as is his right, as is his duty. For in his horn lies more than ale. It holds the weight of his authority, the thread that binds those around him. Once his horn is drained, others are filled. The order of serving is no accident. It is a ladder of loyalty, a visible map of power. Closest allies first. Warriors whose oaths are strongest. Then, one by one, down the benches, each man receiving not only ale, but recognition. To drink before another was to step above him. To drink after was to bow. Every sip spoke without words. The ritual deepens as horns pass from hand to hand. Each man, when the warmth of ale settles in his chest, feels the urge to speak. This is the time of boasting. Not idle chatter, not careless words, but a sacred rhythm of memory and promise. A warrior rises, his hand heavy on the table, his horn lifted. I fought at Hafrsford. I cut down 3 men before me, and none could stand in my path. The hall roars, some in cheer, some in challenge. Another rises, unwilling to be silent. I sailed west, brought back silver enough to line my wife's hands. And still I hunger for more. Boast answers boast. Word builds upon word, until the hall is alive with voices, with laughter, with pride. But boasting is more than pride. It is binding. A promise spoken before witnesses becomes a chain. I will follow you into battle. I will avenge your death if it comes. I will claim glory where others falter. The ale steadies the courage, loosens the tongue. And once spoken, these words cannot be unsaid. In the corner, the skald stands, a man of words, not war. Yet his voice commands the hall. Ale in his belly, his verses come alive. He chants of gods, of Odin stealing the mead of poetry, of Thor crossing storm-tossed seas, of warriors long fallen. The hall falls still, listening, their eyes reflecting fire, their hearts stirring. The rhythm of verse becomes its own intoxication, a trance of language, deeper than any drink. And yet, beneath the laughter, the boasts, the verse, danger lingers. For ale, too, is double-edged. Too much, and pride tips into insult. One careless word, spoken with heat, can spark a feud that burns for years. The wrong boast, the wrong oath, can bind a man to an impossible fate. Still, they drink. Still, they pass the horn. For without it, there is no feast. No weaving of bonds, no proving of worth. Ale is the river that carries the hall into night. Close your eyes now. Feel the weight of that horn in your hand. The rough wood, worn smooth by countless lips. The rim cool, the liquid within heavy and dark. Lift it slowly. Tilt it back. Let the bitter earthiness touch your tongue. It spreads warmth down your throat, into your chest, loosening your body, brightening the fire before your eyes. The voices around you grow louder. Laughter swells. The hall seems to breathe with life. This is the feast. Not simply a meal, but a ritual of power. Every sip, every boast, every oath a thread in the great tapestry of loyalty. And as the fire burns hotter, as the horns are emptied and filled again, another rhythm stirs at the edges. a darker rhythm, a sharper flame. For beyond mead and ale, the Vikings knew of stranger gifts. Mushrooms that burned like fire in the blood, herbs that twisted the mind. And from these rose the berserkers. The hall grows louder, but in the shadows, in the quieter spaces of Viking life, something stranger stirred. Not the sweetness of mead, nor the bitterness of ale, but the sharp, burning touch of the earth itself. In the forests of the north, in the mossy clearings where birch trees rose pale against the sky, a mushroom grew, its cap bright red, dotted with white, like drops of snow upon blood. The fly agaric, Amanita muscaria. Beautiful, dangerous, mysterious. It is said that some who sought courage beyond fear turned to this mushroom, chewed it, swallowed it, or brewed it into strange mixtures. At first bitter, then burning, then a heat rising through the body, the world shifting, edges sharpening, colors deepening, a frenzy rising, like fire catching dry wood. And from this frenzy came the berserkers. The berserkers, men who fought like beasts, who felt no pain, who bit their shields and howled like wolves, their eyes wide, their breath ragged, their bodies trembling with fury. To their enemies, they seemed not human, but possessed. And perhaps, in some way, they were. Some whispered it was Odin's gift, that these men had drunk madness from the gods. Others whispered of mushrooms, or of henbane, a dark plant that twisted the mind. Seeds crushed, smoke inhaled, potions brewed in secret. The line between medicine and poison, between courage and death, was razor thin. Close your eyes. Imagine the night before battle. The warriors gathered, drums beating softly, fire casting shadows on painted faces. One by one, they chew the red caps. Bitter, foul. They wait. Silence heavy. Breath tight. And then it begins. Their hearts thunder. Their eyes blaze. The fire seems to roar louder. Their bodies feel both heavy and light. Their skin prickles with heat. They howl. They shake. They rise to their feet with a force that seems otherworldly. Fear is gone. Pain is forgotten. Only rage. Only the rhythm of blood in their ears. Only the hunger to strike. This was the berserker trance. A state where man became beast. Where warriors believed themselves wolves or bears. Where strength seemed doubled. Where wounds were ignored. Where the mind broke free of limits. Yet when the frenzy passed, the body was left hollow. Some collapsed in exhaustion, trembling, shivering, unable to rise. Others slept for days, lost in strange dreams, their bodies racked with fever. For every gift, a cost. For every high, a fall. And not all who tasted these mushrooms survived. Some were lost to madness, some to death. But for those who did, their names lived on. Berserkers became legend, the terror of battlefields, the shock and awe of Viking war. But not all mushrooms were for rage. Some were for vision, for prophecy, for touching the hidden world. Shamans and seers knew this well. They did not fight with axes. They fought with words, with sight beyond sight. And their gifts came from herbs, from roots, from smoke rising in the fire. So as the berserkers raged, others sat quietly in the night, chanting, breathing, letting the mind slip sideways, drifting not into fury, but into vision. And it is there that we meet the vulva, the seers. The hall, once so full of laughter and boasting, begins to quiet. The fire still glows. Horns still pass from hand to hand. But the mood shifts. For tonight, a guest is present. A figure both honored and feared. She is the vulva, the seers, the one who walks between worlds. Not warrior, not chieftain, but her presence carries more weight than iron or gold. She steps into the hall slowly. Her cloak is heavy, lined with fur, hood drawn low over her face. At her side hangs a pouch of herbs, roots wrapped in linen, seeds kept in bone containers, powders ground to fine dust. In her hand, a staff, tall, carved with runes that spiral upward like climbing vines. It thuds softly against the floor as she walks, and each step draws silence from the men around the fire. The warriors lower their horns. Voices fade. Even the skald, mid-verse, lets his words fall unspoken. For all know, the vulva sees what others cannot. And her words, once spoken, weave themselves into the fabric of fate. She is invited to sit near the fire. The chieftain himself gestures with respect. A bench is cleared, a cushion laid. She lowers herself slowly, staff resting across her knees. The ritual begins. Her voice, soft at first, rises into the hall. Not song, not quite speech, but something between. A chant, a low, rhythmic hum that coils like smoke. The sound fills the air. Not loud, yet impossible to ignore. It seems to come not only from her lips, but from the walls, the floor, the very air itself. Her assistants, women who travel with her, begin to prepare the space. One feeds herbs into the fire. The smoke rises sharp, bitter, curling into the rafters. Another places a bowl of water before her, floating with herbs, gleaming with firelight. A third beats a drum. Slow, steady, like the heartbeat of the hall itself. The smoke grows thicker. It clings to skin, to hair, to breath. Angelica, sharp and clean, clearing the senses. Mugwort, bitter, earthy, pulling the mind inward. Henbane, dangerous, heavy, its fumes swirling in the head like a storm. Each plant chosen not for comfort, but for the doors it could open. The vulva inhales deeply, her body rocking with the rhythm of the drum. Her eyes half close, lips moving faster, words spilling like a river in flood. Some are in the tongue of men, others in words long forgotten. Her breath deepens, her face pales. She seems both here and elsewhere. Those who watch sit tense, some with awe, some with fear, for they know, when she speaks clearly again, it will not be as herself, but as a voice carrying messages from beyond. Time stretches. The hall holds its breath. And then it comes. Her eyes snap open, glowing with firelight. Her voice sharp, cutting through the silence. She speaks of ships yet to sail, of storms yet to come, of blood yet to be spilled. She names names, of men who will rise, of men who will fall. Some promises sweet, others bitter, and every word falls heavy. For in her mouth, words are not guesses, they are truths. The warriors glance at each other. Some nod with pride, others pale with dread. For to be spoken of in prophecy is to be bound. No man can unhear it. No oath can undo it. And when the trance finally leaves her, she collapses back onto her seat, her breath ragged, her skin damp with sweat. Her assistants rush to her side, laying hands upon her shoulders, pressing herbs to her lips, whispering softly. The drum slows. The chant fades. The hall exhales. Voices rise again, though quieter, more cautious. For they know the vulva has seen. But not all her work was prophecy. Sometimes her herbs healed, easing pain, cooling fevers, drawing poison from wounds. Sometimes her herbs soothed sleepless minds, helped warriors drift into dreams. Other times, they opened doors, showed visions, gave glimpses of things beyond the reach of ordinary eyes. The vulva was more than a seer. She was balance itself. A healer. A guide. A weaver of fates. She stood apart from the hall. Never fully of it. Always slightly beyond. Feared, honored, necessary. Close your eyes now. And picture her. The fire at her feet. The staff across her knees. The smoke swirling upward around her. Her voice low, steady. Her chant weaving through your breath. The air thick, heavy, bitter. Your mind softening. Loosening. Drifting. Until her words seem not hers alone, but whispers carried by the night. This, too, was intoxication. Not the wild frenzy of mushrooms in the berserker's blood. Not the laughter and boasting of ale in the mead hall. But the quiet trance of smoke and song. The slow unraveling of the mind into vision. And when the ritual ended, when the vulva rose and left the hall, the air seemed different. Lighter, yet charged. As if something unseen had passed through. And still lingered. This was her gift. Her danger. Her mystery. And as the memory of her chant fades into the night, we turn to the herbs themselves. The sacred plants of the north. The quiet tools of trance and healing. The fire burns low. The hall quiets again. And yet, the smoke lingers, carrying scents that whisper of earth, of root, of leaf. The north was a land of stone and snow. But even there, plants grew. Hardy herbs clinging to cliffs. Roots twisting deep into frozen ground. Leaves that could heal. Seeds that could sicken. Flowers that could open the mind. For the Vikings, these were not mere plants. They were gifts of the earth. Each with a spirit, a purpose, a power. Some for wounds. Some for sickness. Some for sleep. And some for stepping beyond the ordinary world. Angelica. Tall, hollow-stemmed, crowned with umbels of pale green-white. It thrived where few others did, standing proud against wind and frost. Its stalks and roots, sharp and sweet, were prized for strength. A plant of power, said to guard against plague, to sharpen breath, to stir the blood. Burned in fire, its smoke cleared the mind. Inhaled, it opened the chest. It was healer and guide both. Mugwort. Bitter, earthy, growing wild by rivers and fields. Its leaves narrow, silvered beneath. Its scent sharp, almost metallic. This was a plant of dreams. Of visions. Seers tucked it into pouches, laid it beneath pillows, brewed it into bitter teas. It was said to guide travelers. Not on roads of earth, but on paths of spirit. To smoke mugwort was to invite visions, to dream deeply, to see what lies hidden. Henbane. Dangerous, potent, cloaked in mystery. Its leaves broad, sticky. Its flowers veined, yellow and purple. A plant not to be taken lightly, for its seeds and leaves could twist the mind. A little brought sleep, or strange visions. Too much brought madness, or death. Still, it was used by those who knew its secrets. Warriors before battle. Seerses in trance. Its smoke coiled heavy. Its touch hot and burning. It carried the spirit into places both wondrous and terrifying. And there were others. Yarrow, with its feathery leaves, stanching wounds, slowing blood. Juniper, sharp and resinous, burned as incense to cleanse the air. Nettle, stinging in the hand, yet nourishing in soup and tea, strengthening the body. Each plant known, each plant named, each plant part of the living web of the north. These herbs were not gathered lightly. The women who knew them walked the woods in silence. They bent low in the fields, muttered prayers as they cut roots, whispered thanks to the earth. For every plant was spirit, and to take it was to enter a bond. Close your eyes. Imagine a quiet northern meadow. The air damp with mist, the ground soft beneath your feet. The vulva bends low, fingers brushing leaves silvered with dew. She cuts a stem, ties it carefully with thread, slips it into her pouch. The scent rises, bitter, sharp. Already, you feel it in your head. A dizziness, a drift. This was how the Vikings touched the unseen. Not with temples of stone. Not with incense of faraway lands. But with the simple, secret power of the herbs that grew at their feet. Each leaf, each root. A key to another state of being. And when night fell, when the hall was quiet, when the fire burned low, herbs were burned in the coals, brewed in bowls, crushed into powders, smoke curled into lungs, bitter liquid slid down throats, and slowly, the mind loosened its grip. Dreams rose. Visions shimmered. And the world beyond the world opened its gates. This was not escape. Not simply pleasure. It was ritual. It was medicine. It was the weaving of human breath with earth's breath. The sacred herbs of the north were the silent companions of Viking life. Healing wounds, shaping dreams, opening fates. And as the herbs smolder in the fire, their smoke drifting into rafters, we see how fire itself became a tool. Not only for warmth, not only for light, but as a vessel of transformation. The fire. Always the fire. In the Viking world, fire was life itself. It was warmth in the bitter cold. It was light in the endless night. It was the heart of every hall, the center of every gathering. And yet, fire was more than survival. It was spirit. A bridge. A doorway. For when herbs and roots were cast into its flames, when smoke rose thick and curling into the rafters, fire became a tool to reach beyond the ordinary. Picture the longhouse, its beams dark with years of smoke, its roof low, holding heat and scent within. The fire in the center glows red, its flames licking upward, sparks spiraling into shadow. Around it, men and women sit close, their faces flickering in and out of light. The vulva sits nearest, her staff across her knees, her breath steady. At her side, a bowl of herbs, dried, crushed, waiting. One by one, the herbs are fed to the fire. Angelica first, its sharp sweetness filling the air. Juniper berries crackle, sending resinous bursts of scent into the smoke. Mugwort follows. Bitter, earthy, its smell heavy, clinging to hair, to skin, to breath. Henbane, carefully measured. A few leaves only, their fumes thick and dizzying. The fire accepts each gift, and the smoke rises, blending, twisting. Close your eyes. Breathe with them. The smoke curls into your lungs. It prickles the throat, it burns lightly at the nose. But with it comes a softness in the head, a loosening. The fire's glow seems brighter, the crackle sharper. The shadows on the wall move as if alive. Voices begin to chant. Low, steady, rising and falling like waves. The drum beats again. Slow, deliberate. Each thud echoes in the chest. A second heartbeat. Steady, steady. And as the smoke thickens, as the chant deepens, the mind begins to drift. The fire is no longer only fire. It becomes a path. A column of flame rising into the dark. A bridge between worlds. The smoke twists into shapes. Faces, animals, spirits flicker in the shifting patterns. One moment, the head of a wolf. The next, the curve of a ship. The vision is never still. Never fixed. Always moving. Always becoming. The vulva leans forward. Her eyes half closed, lids heavy. She breathes deeply of the smoke. Her body sways with the rhythm of the drum. Her lips murmur words, some familiar, some lost to time. Her staff strikes the ground. Once. Twice. Each strike ringing like thunder through the hall. The people hold their breath. Waiting. She speaks. Her words come broken, jagged, yet full of power. She names omens in the fire. She sees a raven wing beating through smoke. She calls it a message from Odin. She sees the sea rising high, ships swallowed by waves. She warns of storms to come. She sees a man's face, pale in death, and those who know him shift uncomfortably in their seats. Every word hangs heavy. For the fire, the smoke, the herbs, they are not games. They are threads of fate itself. And yet, for those gathered, the ritual is more than prophecy. It is release. For as the smoke drifts, as the chants surround them, they too feel lighter. The day's burdens slip away. Their bodies soften, their eyes grow heavy. Some sway, some close their eyes, some let tears fall. The ritual fire carries them, not into frenzy, but into surrender. Think of it now. You sit in that hall. The fires glow upon your skin. The smoke thick around you. Your breath slows. Your chest rises and falls with the rhythm of the drum. The crackle of fire blends with the murmur of chant. Your mind drifts. Images flicker before your closed eyes. Perhaps a memory. Perhaps a dream. Perhaps something else entirely. This was the gift of fire. Not only to warm, not only to light, but to transform, to lift mortals beyond themselves, to carry them into vision, to make the unseen felt. And when at last the ritual ends, when the herbs are spent, when the chant fades, when the smoke thins, the hall is hushed, changed. Men sit silently, their faces pale, their eyes distant. Women lean against one another, exhausted, tearful, calm. The vulva rests, her staff heavy in her hands. The fire crackles on, ordinary again. But all who sat before it know. It has carried them somewhere else. And so it was, time and again. Fire and smoke. Herbs and chant. Tools of the spirit as much as of survival. This, too, was intoxication. Not only for pleasure, not only for frenzy, but for wisdom, for community, for contact with what lay just beyond the veil of sight. And as the fire dims to embers, as the hall breathes in silence, a new ritual begins. The horns are lifted once more, but not of mead or ale this time. Of carved bone, polished smooth, filled with liquid light. The drinking horns. The fire still glows. Smoke drifts upward in lazy spirals. The hall breathes in silence. And then, a hand lifts. Not a staff this time. Not a bowl of herbs. But a horn. The drinking horn. Curved, polished, gleaming in firelight. A simple thing, perhaps, to the eye of today. Yet in the Viking age, it was a vessel of power. No glass, no clay cup, no wooden mug could compare. The horn, taken from cattle, polished smooth, rimmed sometimes with silver or bronze, was a mark of honor. It was more than a container. It was a symbol, a story in itself. Imagine it now. You feel its weight in your hands. Heavier at the base, narrowing toward the tip. Its surface smooth, cool against your fingers, yet faintly textured with the memory of the beast it once belonged to. Lift it. Tilt it slightly. The liquid within swirls, golden in the fire's glow. When you drink, you cannot set it down until it is empty. The horn demands completion. It insists upon commitment. And so, every sip from a horn was more than a sip. It was an act, a statement, a gesture made in full view of the hall. In the high seat, the chieftain's horn was larger, often adorned. Its rim banded in metal, its surface carved with runes or knotwork. When he raised it, all eyes followed. When he drank, it was not only for thirst. It was for power, for leadership. The horn in his hand was a throne made small, a kingdom curved in bone. But horns were not only for chiefs. They passed from hand to hand. One horn shared among brothers, among warriors, among companions at sea and at home. To drink from the same horn was to declare unity. To press your lips where another's had been was to erase distance. To tie your fate to theirs. The act itself carried weight. To refuse a horn offered was insult. To spill from it was shame. To lift it high, to drain it fully, to pass it on with steady hand, was to prove yourself worthy. Close your eyes. Picture it. The hall's light flickers across a dozen horns lifted high, each curved like a crescent moon, each filled with mead or ale. Their rims touch in the air, a chorus of hollow clinks. Voices rise with them. Oaths spoken, songs begun. The horns become not objects, but extensions of the people themselves. And when the horn empties, when the last drop slides down the throat, there is a pause, a breath, a moment where time seems to still, and then the horn passes on, into another hand, another oath, another promise. The horn is thus both equalizer and divider. Equalizer, because all must drink, all must share. Divider, because the size of the horn, the decoration, the order of serving, revealed the web of power. Who drank first, who waited longest, who received the richest horn, told all who mattered in that hall. But beyond status, beyond ritual, there was intimacy. A horn could seal a friendship, could soften enmity, could serve as a bridge between men, women, leaders, followers. It was the vessel of connection, of the high and of the humble alike. Now breathe slowly, and imagine lifting one, the mead within catching the glow of the fire, your hand warming the smooth curve, You lift it. Tip it back. The liquid flows steady, unstoppable, until the horn is empty. When you lower it, your cheeks are flushed, your chest warm, your mind softer. And as you pass it to another, your lips still sweet with honey. You know. This, too, was how the Vikings touched one another's lives. The horn, then, was not only a tool of drink. It was a tool of memory, of oath, of story, a silent witness to laughter, to promises, to betrayals. And in the old myths, even the gods themselves drank from horns. Odin, Loki, Thor. They too lifted horns in Asgard's halls. For in the Viking mind, to drink from a horn was not only human, it was divine. And so, as horns are lifted, as the hall sways with song and laughter, we drift further into the myths themselves, where intoxication was not only ritual, but story. The tale of Odin, and the mead of poetry. The horns are raised. Voices echo in the hall. And as drink flows, so too do stories. For the Vikings did not see intoxication as only human. It was divine, woven into the very fabric of their myths. The greatest of these tales was of Odin, the All-Father, and the mead of poetry. Long ago, in the age when gods still walked the earth, there was a war. The Aesir, the high gods, and the Vani, gods of earth and sea. When the war ended, they sought peace. And from their truce came a strange creation. Both sides spat into a great vessel, their saliva mingling, a symbol of union. From it, they shaped a man, Kvasir. He was no ordinary being. From the moment of his birth, wisdom flowed from his lips. He traveled far and wide, answering any question asked, spreading knowledge wherever he went. But wisdom is always coveted, always at risk. Two dwarfs, Fjala and Gala, lured Kvasir into their hall. And there, they killed him. From his blood, they brewed a mead, mixing it with honey, sealing within it all his wisdom, all his gift of poetry. This was the mead of poetry, the drink that could make any who sipped it a skald, a master of verse, a speaker of truths. The dwarfs kept it hidden, hoarded it. But soon, a giant named Suttungr seized it from them, claiming it as his own. He hid it deep within a mountain, in 3 great vessels. And he set his daughter, Gunlo, to guard it. Word of this mead reached Odin. And Odin, ever the seeker of wisdom, knew he must have it. For with it, he could grant poetry to gods and men. He could shape the fate of worlds through word and verse. So Odin set out. He traveled in disguise, as he often did. He came to the home of Suttungr's brother, Borgi, and there he worked as a laborer. Day after day, season after season, he toiled, until Borgi owed him a favor. When the time came, Odin asked to taste the mead. Borgi hesitated, but agreed to help. He took Odin to the mountain where it was kept, drilled a hole into the rock, and Odin, in the form of a snake, slipped inside. There, within the mountain's dark belly, he found Gunlo. She sat by the mead, guarding it faithfully. Odin charmed her, whispered to her, and she, moved by his words, allowed him to stay. For 3 nights he remained with her, and in return, she gave him 3 draughts of the mead. But Odin was clever. With each draught, he drained not a sip, but a vessel entire. He swallowed all of it, every drop, until the mead of poetry was his. Then, shifting shape once more, he became an eagle. Wings vast, feathers dark. He beat the air and rose from the mountain, the mead burning within him. Behind him, Suttungr gave chase, also in eagle form, his wings thundering against the sky. The gods of Asgard looked upward. They saw Odin's flight. They set vessels ready, waiting. And as Odin soared over their walls, he spat out the mead, pouring it into their containers. Thus, the mead of poetry was brought to Asgard. A gift for gods, a gift for men. But not all of it was saved. Some spilled, some fell behind. That portion, they said, became the share of fools and bad poets. Drunken rambling, empty verse, the dregs of divine inspiration. And so the Vikings told it. That poetry itself was born of intoxication. That the gift of verse, of wisdom, of speech that could move the heart, came from drink, from blood turned to mead, from a god's theft, from the high of honey and magic. Close your eyes. Picture Odin soaring, wings beating hard, the sky roaring around him. His belly heavy with mead, his mouth sweet with honey and blood. Below, mountains rise like teeth. Above, Asgard's walls gleam. The flight is frantic, wild, desperate. And then, the release. The spilling of mead into waiting hands. A rain of golden drops, falling from the sky, carrying with them the gift of inspiration. For the Vikings, this tale was not only myth. It was truth hidden in story. That intoxication was not weakness, but power. That to drink was to borrow the strength of gods. To taste wisdom, to speak more freely, to see more clearly. And so, every time a horn was raised, every time mead touched the lips of a poet or a warrior, there was Odin, too. There was the memory of that flight, There was the echo of stolen wisdom, passed from gods to men. The hall, once again, is filled with voices. But now, each word carries the weight of myth. Each song is touched with the divine. And each drink is more than drink. It is a fragment of poetry, of story, of inspiration itself. And as the last words of the skald fade into the smoky rafters, the warriors stir, their faces bright with drink, their eyes gleaming with memory. The line between myth and hall, between God and man, blurs, then vanishes. And beyond the hall, beyond the myth, another intoxication waits. Not in words, not in verse, but in battle itself. The frenzy of the berserkers, the war-born high. The feast ends. The hall grows quiet. But beyond the longhouse walls, the world is never still. There are always enemies, rivals, threats waiting across the sea. And so, intoxication was not only for joy, not only for poetry and prophecy, it was also for war. For the moment when shields locked together, when swords clashed, when lives hung in the balance, the ordinary man feels fear before battle. His heart beats fast, his hands sweat, his thoughts race. The thought of death weighs heavy. The sound of steel and screams chills the marrow. But the Vikings sought ways to step beyond fear. Ways to fill their hearts with something greater. And so, they turned to intoxication. Some drank before battle. Horns of ale or mead passed from hand to hand. Not to dull the senses, but to steady courage. To remind them they were not alone. To bind them to their brothers. To turn fear into fire. Others chewed herbs, or breathed smoke. Roots and leaves that burned the tongue, that clouded the mind, that filled the chest with heat. Henbane, bitter and dangerous. Belladonna, perhaps, in secret mixtures. Even the fly agaric, that red-capped mushroom of frenzy. Each a key, unlocking something primal. And then, there were the berserkers. Men who fought without armor. Bare-chested, wild-eyed. They bit their shields until their teeth cracked. They howled like wolves, growled like bears. Their bodies shook, trembling with rage, with power. They rushed into battle first, fearless, untouchable. Their enemies faltered at the sight. Was it mushrooms that fueled them? Herbs burned into their blood? Or was it something deeper? A trance born of ritual, of chant, of breath and belief. No one can say for certain. But all agreed. They were unstoppable. For pain did not touch them. Fear did not reach them. They lived in a fire that consumed all else. Imagine standing there, The shield wall ahead, spears glinting in the morning sun. Your breath tight, your stomach heavy. And beside you, a berserker. His eyes wild, his body trembling. He snarls, his mouth foaming with spit. His voice a growl that shakes the air. He beats his chest, his shield, his head, until blood trickles. And yet he does not falter. When the signal comes, he does not walk. He does not march. He runs straight into the enemy's line, roaring, striking. His axe falls again and again, even as blades pierce his skin, even as blood runs down his arms. He does not stop. He cannot stop. And you, carried by his frenzy, find your own fear slipping away. For if such madness can exist, if such courage can stand beside you, then perhaps you, too, can be unbroken. This was the intoxication of war. Not only drink, not only herbs, but the contagion of courage. The rhythm of drums beating before the charge. The chants shouted across the battlefield. The shared fire that turned men into more than men. It was a high born of terror and triumph alike. A soaring above pain. A drowning of self in the storm. And when the battle ended, when the frenzy ebbed, the cost was always felt. Berserkers collapsed, trembling, empty, their bodies racked with exhaustion, their minds lost in shadows. Some never rose again, their hearts broken by their own fire. But their names lived on. Their madness became legend. Their intoxication became part of the saga of war itself. Close your eyes. Hear the sound. The crash of shields, the howl of berserkers, the thud of drums, the clash of steel. Feel the frenzy building. The fire in the chest, the roar in the ears. And then, the silence after. The smoke drifting over the field. The high gone. The cost left behind. For the Vikings, war and intoxication were twined together. To fight was to burn. To drink was to bind. And both carried men beyond themselves. And yet, intoxication was not only for warriors. It was also for the bonds of community. For those nights when fear was set aside. When laughter rose louder than grief. When the hall itself became a vessel of unity. The hall breathes again. The frenzy of war fades. The memory of shields and blood drifts into silence. And what remains is the heart of Viking life. Not the battlefield, but the gathering. Not the lone warrior, but the community. For in the north, where winters stretched long and dark, where snow buried the earth and the sea froze at its edges. Survival was never solitary. It was communal. And nothing embodied this more than the feast. Picture it. A long table, heavy with food, roasted meat, steaming bowls of stew, bread dark and coarse, butter yellow as gold. Pitchers of ale. Horns of mead. Carried back and forth. Filling, emptying, filling again. Voices rising, laughter spilling into smoke-filled air. The feast was more than a meal. It was glue, stitching the community together. A place where farmer and fighter, skald and servant, sat side by side. All could lift a horn. All could feel the warmth spread through their chest. And for a time, the walls between them blurred. Drink was equalizer and divider both. Equalizer, because in its warmth, even the lowliest man found laughter. Divider, because the order of serving, the size of horns, reminded all of their place. But still, the act of sharing bound them together. The same firelight on every face. The same smoke in every breath. The same sweetness of honey on every tongue. Close your eyes. Imagine the sound. A chorus of voices singing in unison. Some high, some low, some steady, some slurred. Feet stamping in rhythm. Hands slapping the table. The hall alive with energy, yet softened by drink. This was community intoxication. It dissolved pride. It softened grief. It gave permission for joy. For storytelling. For tears shed openly. It made space for confession. For reconciliation. Even feuds could cool when horns were lifted, when men pressed their lips to the same rim. The rituals were woven into every gesture. When the horn passed, you did not sip casually. You drank with intention. When you boasted, others bore witness. When you swore an oath, it was sealed not by ink, but by ale dripping from your lips. Every man was bound by what he spoke in drink. And so the feast itself became a court. A temple. A council of fate. Women, too, played their part. They carried the horns. Their presence shaping the rhythm of the feast. A woman's choice of who to serve first could lift a man's honor, or wound his pride. Her refusal could shame him before all. Thus, even in silence, her hand upon the horn carried power. Children watched, learning their place. They saw the rituals, the boasts, the laughter, the order. And they learned how community was built, how loyalty was tested, how oaths were bound in honey and grain. The feast stretched long into the night. Horns emptied and filled again. Voices grew louder, then softer. Some men drifted into sleep upon the benches. Others stumbled into the cold night, laughter echoing across the snow. But the memory remained. The bonds tightened. the community renewed. And beyond the hall, the memory of such feasts lived in story. For the sagas spoke often of drinking, of men who proved loyalty through their cups, of oaths sworn and broken in the mead hall, of bonds forged in the glow of fire and the sweetness of mead. Close your eyes and imagine yourself there. Your hand warms against the curve of the horn. You lift it, drink, pass it on. A man you hardly know takes it next. His lips press where yours have just been. And in that moment, you are bound. Not by blood, not by battle, but by drink, by ritual, by community. This was intoxication not as escape, but as weaving. It tied the many into one. It turned strangers into companions, companions into brothers. It gave shape to the community. And as the fire dimmed, as the last horn emptied, the hall grew quiet. But the bonds forged there would last beyond the night. They would carry into the fields, into the ships, into the battles yet to come. And so, intoxication was not only for frenzy, not only for prophecy. It was for community, for belonging, for remembering that no one was truly alone in the long dark of the north. And yet, beyond the joy, beyond the ritual, another shadow lingered. For in time, eyes from outside the old ways turned upon these feasts. Eyes that judged, that sought to change. The eyes of the church. The hall glows. Laughter lingers in the smoky rafters. Horns rest empty upon the table. But outside, the world begins to change. For beyond the fjords, across the seas and the rivers, a new faith spreads. The faith of the cross, the word of Christ, carried by monks, by kings, by missionaries. And with it came new eyes. Eyes that looked upon the feasts, the rituals, the smoke, the horns, and saw not tradition, but sin. To the Christians, mead was not the drink of gods, but a temptation. Ale was not a ritual of loyalty, but a step toward ruin. Mushrooms, herbs, smoke-filled chants were not visions, but witchcraft. The vulva, once honored and feared, became in their words a sorceress, a witch. Her chants recast as dark magic, her staff as a devil's tool. Close your eyes. Imagine a missionary, cloaked in wool, standing at the edge of a hall. He watches as horns are lifted, as men boast and women pour. He sees the smoke curl, the chants rise, the people swaying in trance. To him, this is not community, not prophecy, not a weaving of fate. It is idolatry. It is drunkenness. it is the work of demons. And so, slowly, whispers spread that the old ways must fade, that Christ, not Odin, must guide men's lives, that the high must not come from mead or mushroom, but from prayer, from sacrament, from bread and wine blessed by holy hands. The church was not blind to power. They saw that feasts bound men together, and so they offered their own feasts. Holy days. Rituals centered not on mead-halls, but on churches, where wine, not ale, was poured, where bread, not meat, was broken, where prophecy came not from smoke and herb, but from Scripture. Yet change was not swift, for the North was stubborn. Its winters long, its traditions deeper still. Men who had raised horns all their lives would not easily trade them for chalices. Women who carried herbs in their pouches would not so quickly cast them aside. The old ways lingered, but slowly they shifted. The vulva disappeared from the hall, her chants silenced. The berserker faded from battle, his frenzy forbidden. The horns remained, but their meaning softened. No longer a bridge to gods, but a relic, a memory. Still, in the quiet corners of the North, some resisted. Some kept their herbs, their smoke, their chants. They blended the old with the new. A prayer spoken, but mugwort still burned beneath the rafters. A cross hung upon the wall, but a horn still passed at feast. The transition was not a single night, but a long twilight. Close your eyes. Imagine that twilight. A hall half in shadow, half in light. At one end, a priest reciting Latin prayers. At the other, a skald singing Odin's name. Between them, the people, uncertain, drawn to both. The horn passes, but so too does the bread. The smoke rises, but so too does the incense. This was the meeting of worlds, the intoxication of old, and the discipline of new. And in that meeting, something was lost, and something was transformed. For the church feared not only drunkenness, but freedom. For in drink, in trance, in herb and horn, men and women touched something wild, something beyond control. The church sought to tame it, to shape it into ritual under their authority. Wine blessed, measured, controlled. Visions confined to saints, not to seers. Frenzy condemned, unless it served the glory of God. And so, slowly, the high of the Vikings was rewritten. Once a gift of gods and earth, now recast as temptation. Once a thread of community, now a stain to be washed away. But memory lingers. Even as churches rose upon old sacred sites, even as priests preached against drunken feasts. The people remembered the warmth of horns lifted high, the smell of herbs burning in the fire, the voices of seers whispering truths in smoke. And though the church changed the words, the rituals lived on in other forms. The feasting at Yule, reborn as Christmas tables groaning with food. The drinking horns, reshaped into chalices. The chants of the vulva, echoed faintly in hymns. The Christian eyes judged, but they could not erase. For memory is stubborn, and tradition seeps into new vessels. And so, intoxication remained, but clothed in new robes, given new names. Its fire dimmed, but never extinguished. Close your eyes. Breathe softly. Imagine that slow change. Centuries unfolding like smoke drifting across rafters. Old ways fading. New ways rising. But always, always, the human yearning remained. To gather, to drink, to escape the weight of the world, to touch something greater than themselves. And in time, long after the old gods fell silent, echoes of those Viking highs still stirred in memory. The centuries turn, the longhouses crumble, the fires go out, the chants of the vulva fade into silence. The old gods fall quiet, their names written only in sagas. And yet, not all is lost. For memory is stubborn. Traditions slip beneath the surface, hide in shadows, wait for their time, and in quiet ways, they return. Today, mead is brewed once more, in small cottages, in modern breweries, in cups and horns lifted at festivals. Its golden sweetness, once sacred, now savored again. Each sip carries the hum of bees, the glow of fire, the echo of halls where warriors once swore their oaths. At harvest fairs and Viking reenactments, horns are raised. And though the men who drink wear denim instead of wool, and women carry phones instead of staffs, the gesture is the same. Horn lifted, horn drained, horn passed. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself at such a gathering. The music of fiddles, of drums, rising in the air. Laughter spilling across firelit fields. The taste of honey wine on your tongue. You feel the warmth spread through your chest, just as it did 1,000 years ago. For in that sweetness, something ancient still lingers. The berserker, too, survives. Not in shield walls, not in battle cries, but in stories told around tables, in books, in games, in films. Men and women still whisper of warriors who knew no fear, of fighters who shook with frenzy, who seemed touched by something beyond. In gyms, some seek the same fire, pushing their bodies until sweat blinds their eyes, until their breath roars like thunder. In stadiums, athletes roar, their fans chanting like drums, their bodies trembling with adrenaline. Modern echoes of the same high. And herbs, mushrooms, plants of power, they too remain. Science names their chemicals, studies their effects, but still, people seek them. In quiet rooms, in sacred circles, in festivals under the stars. Some for healing, some for escape, some for vision. And though the language has changed, though no one calls on Odin or chants in old tongues, the yearning is the same. To slip beyond the ordinary, to see what lies just beyond the veil. Even the vulva, once condemned as witch, has her echoes today. In the herbalist, the healer, the dreamer who guides others into meditation. In the poet who closes her eyes and speaks words that feel older than herself. In the women who reclaim the title of seers, who gather in circles with candles and chant to the rhythm of drums. Different names, but the same flame. The Christian eyes once sought to bury these things, to tame the wild highs of horn and herb, of smoke and song. But the truth is, such things cannot die. They live in us, in the marrow, in the longing of the human spirit. The need to gather, to drink, to loosen the body, to lift the mind. It is older than any church, older than any king. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Imagine a festival today. Tents glowing with lanterns. People dressed in furs, in helms, in leather. A horn raised, laughter spilling into the night. Children running with wooden shields. Women weaving crowns of herbs. The fire crackling, sparks leaping into the dark sky. The same as it was 1,000 years ago. And yet new. The echo is not perfect. It is softened, reshaped. But in that echo, we remember that the Vikings were not only warriors, but dreamers, seekers of trance, lovers of honey and smoke. That to be human is to long for more than bread and stone. To be human is to long for the high. And so, intoxication remains. Not as it once was, but as it always will be. In every horn lifted, in every fire burned, in every story told by the crackle of night, the Vikings still live. Their highs still breathe. Their echoes still drift through time. And as the night grows deep, as the fire of memory burns low, we turn to reflection, to gather all these threads into a final, gentle weave. The night is quiet. The fire has burned low. Only embers glow now, their light soft, pulsing, like a heartbeat in the dark. The voices have faded. The horns rest empty. The chants are silenced. And what remains is memory. We have walked together through feasts and battles, through halls thick with smoke and fields heavy with blood. We have seen the Vikings lift their horns of mead, sweet and golden, carrying the warmth of summer's bees into winter's night. We have sat with them as ale flowed, as oaths were sworn, as boasts rose like sparks into the rafters. We have stood with the berserkers, trembling with frenzy, their eyes wide, their breath ragged, their fury beyond fear. We have listened to the Volva, her staff striking the ground, her chant weaving smoke into vision, her words binding the fate of men. We have breathed the herbs, angelica, mugwort, henbane, bitter, sharp, dangerous, yet opening doors into other worlds. We have watched fire itself become a bridge, smoke rising, faces shifting in the flame, spirits whispering in the crackle. We have lifted the drinking horn, felt its weight, its curve, its sweetness upon our lips. We have followed Odin on his flight, the mead of poetry burning in his belly, spilling from his beak in golden drops. We have walked the battlefield, felt fear dissolve in frenzy, courage rise like flame in the chest. We have sat again in the hall, shoulder to shoulder, laughter and tears mingling, drink binding the many into one. And we have watched as new eyes fell upon these things, as priests judged, as crosses rose, as old rituals dimmed into twilight. Yet still, echoes remained, in mead brewed today, in stories told, in festivals where horns rise once more. Close your eyes. Breathe softly. Let all these moments drift through you like smoke, rising, curling, fading into the rafters of the mind. Do not hold them tightly. Let them pass, slow and gentle. For history itself is a kind of intoxication, a high we feel not in the body, but in the imagination. It loosens us. It carries us beyond ourselves. It lets us sit by fires long extinguished, and walk among people long turned to dust. The Vikings are gone. Their halls are silent. Their ships sunk or buried. But the memory of their highs, their mead, their herbs, their fire, their frenzy, still lingers. Not because we need to drink as they drank, or rage as they raged, but because in their rituals, in their searching, we see ourselves, our same human hunger, to soften pain, to find joy, to reach beyond the ordinary. Our same desire to gather, to belong, to be carried by something greater than ourselves. Tonight, by the glow of this quiet fire, you have walked with them. You have felt their warmth, their laughter, their visions, And now, as the embers fade, it is time to let it all go. Rest now. Let your body sink deeper into stillness. Let your breath slow, soft as the drift of snow on a silent northern night. Let your thoughts dissolve, as smoke dissolves into darkness. The hall is empty now. The horns put away. The fire dimmed. Only you remain. And even you, too, will drift. The Vikings are gone. But their echoes whisper still. And you, here, listening in the hush of night, carry those whispers into dreams. Sleep well. Sleep deeply. And let the world of fire, of horn, of herb, of song fade into quiet rest.